What up, y'all? It's your dude Born Shining here. I'm Born Shining. You're Born Shining. We are all born shining. And don't let nobody tell you otherwise. And if they do try, point them to the science. And the science says that we are made of light. And what's interesting about this, well, before I start tearing off into this, I want to give a shout out to the great spirit and great creator, spirit which moves through all things, the universal life force. I want to give a shout out to the archangels, my spirit guides, my ancestors, crossover loved ones, and all my friends, known and unknown, seen and unseen, and all the invisible helpers. And yeah, so, you know, the science points to the fact that we are just energy and that there's a strong support that shows that we are condensed light, crystallized light. And it's kind of funny to me, not funny haha, but funny what the fuck, that, you know, people who believe in this kind of stuff. I mean, we're at the point now where science is starting to the advancements in technology are 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 getting to a point where they're starting to validate a lot of these ancient spiritual teachings. And so there's, I mean, there's a couple of different elements to this that I think are interesting and worth talking about. But you know, when we talk about belief, you know, the power of belief. What do you believe? And there's a lot to that. All right, there's a lot to that. So, but first, let's touch on this idea of science and what's scientific and not scientific and all of this kind of stuff. And you know, for me, like when I talk with people and I can feel this, there's like an aversion to, it's like a certain, it's almost a palpable cognitive dissonance to invisible things and spiritual, especially spirituality, but invisible things. Yet at the same time, people are going to put their faith in things like, you know, oh, what are those things called? They measure the earthquakes. There's these devices. I mean, even music. That's like, you can't see music. Not a physical thing, you know? A record, that's a physical thing. A CD or a tape or a radio or whatever, but you know, the music itself is a vibration. It's a frequency. And so on one hand, people utilize these things, the invisible, they live by the invisible. I mean, our whole world operates on invisible forces. I mean, I'm recording this video and I'm going to upload it to the internet. It's like, where's the internet? Can I touch the internet? No. But when it comes to spirituality and it comes to people talking about a divine source of creation and angels and all of these other things, people seem to have a problem with that. And I see that as a cognitive dissonance. I mean, I think ultimately, in their core of their self, they know that this stuff is real, but they choose to deny it because how do you fit in a world that is boxed in by materialism on many levels, but just the idea of materialism, there seems to be inherent dysfunction because music moves people. I mean, even the most sour fucking person that I can think of listens to music, you know, listens to the radio. They use the radio, they use the internet, they use these invisible things, but when it comes to putting your faith in something that you can't see, people seem to think that that's weird. Um, it's just dysfunction all around. And so, it's like it's okay to believe in the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus, but if you're going to believe in a divine source of creation and you're going to believe in angels and you're going to believe in spirits, then something's wrong with you. And that acceptance, when you accept those things as true, you're 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 really setting yourself apart. And I think a lot of people aren't prepared for that because in our day-to-day life, it's not something that people are as ready to recognize, like, and accept or even talk about. So it's like if it's raining outside, people are going to say, "Oh, it's raining," and they're going to talk about it. But like when you talk about spiritual things, people just kind of give you a funny look, you know, and like that's just like it's weird. But it's weird that it's weird because I know that uh, people have these experiences, and even long before I even knew what was going on, I knew there was something going on. But the difference is I didn't stop pursuing that just because it didn't make sense to anybody else. So this whole idea of materialism and like, oh, it's what's based on science and all of this kind of stuff is just kind of weird to me. Because if you look at the science, we're energy. It suggests that we're energy. And these research experiments are replicatable. People can take the process and all of the parts, and they can recreate these experiments, and they can they find the same, they get the same results. So it just kind of blows my mind that it's still like kind of a taboo thing, that that we're not living by. We're not living by these truths as a collective. Um, so yeah, you know, that's part of it. Um, and one of the reasons why I haven't been putting out a lot of videos is because I've just been so focused on learning and dealing with my own stuff, and just learning and observing and really trying to formulate my own opinions. And not that I don't have my opinions, but it's like I'm trying to think about how to communicate these things to people, and what's the importance behind it. And I mean, if you on the most basic level, most people, like the last class, whatever, like most people have stopped learning. You know, they take a class, they go through high school, maybe they go to college or whatever, but when they're out of college or they're out of high school, when do they learn? What are they learning about the advancements that are happening in the world? Unless it comes up on the news and it's something that these people, quote unquote, these people, the controllers of this realm or whatever, this illusion, this matrix, whenever these people decide to tell somebody something, whenever they decide to publish it in a journal, that's when people know. But the fact is that there's been humongous strides being made in science, quantum science, that completely turn all of this stuff on its head. It completely turns our reality on its head. And I think that there's an element to it which people just don't know how to they don't know how to accept it, because it means that all of the other stuff that they've been doing is has been a lie. You know what I mean? It's like uh it's like if you were in grade school and somebody came up to you and they were like, "Oh, Betty, you know, stole something." And that person was just making shit up. And then everybody started mistreating Betty and treating Betty differently because somebody lied about her, you know? That's kind of what this is like. It's like there's an element of like you have to be able to forgive yourself for doing things that were not in alignment with reality, with the truth. So you got to there's an element of forgiveness. Like you can't learn these new things and change your life without having some kind of moment of acceptance and forgiveness. You know, moving on from acting in a way that you thought was okay to now you know more and you're going to do better. Comes with an element of forgiveness. You know, like for me, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Like for me, when I was in college and I started learning about violence and nonviolence and all these different types of violence, institutional violence, interpersonal violence, there's even self violence. Um, and I started learning about all these things. It clicked in my head. It dawned on me. It's like, holy shit, I've been perpetuating violence. Like here I am. I don't enjoy violence. I'm not a fan of violence. Yet at the same time, being a being raised in the environment that I was raised in, it was like at some point violence is going to be necessary. You know, violence is going to be uh, the answer, and that was just kind of like a fact. So when I got into college, I started learning about all this stuff, and I was realizing like, holy shit, like I've been perpetuating this thing that I don't want to do, this thing that I don't want to be a part of, this thing that I would like to see ending. I realized how I was contributing to it. And that brought on a certain level of shame and guilt. You know, it's like, oh man, like all of this stuff, like I've been, like I made, in that moment, I realized like, oh, I made so many mistakes. Like, oh, I've mistreated people, my family, the people that I care about. I've, I've probably hurt people. And honestly, doing those things in the past, like it hurt me too. I didn't feel good about those things, but I didn't know any better. And so when you learn better, you do better. And when you start learning about energy and you start learning about spiritual things, there comes it comes with an it inherently comes with with forgiveness, because like you have to forgive yourself and move forward and recognize that you were doing the best with what you were given and what you knew at the time. And as you move forward, you're not carrying those burdens anymore, and then you're freed you freed yourself up to operate from a better place, you know. So you don't see yourself as as a bad person. You see yourself as a person who's learning and progressing and doing the best you can with what you have. And so I think that a lot of people aren't ready for that. They're not ready for that part of the process. You know, it's like, yeah, we want to learn about cool things and we want to be entertained, but don't get too serious on us because we're not ready to emotionally handle all of these things that come along with it. Because you can't have the good without the bad. You can't have the light without the dark. And the highs without the lows, you know? And so I think a lot of people, you know, I saw this on there's a tarot channel called Prophetic Vessel. I highly recommend her channel. She's awesome. Um, but she talks about a mental health crisis She talks about mental health crisis. She's a life coach, but she's also talking about like an impending mental health crisis. And I think that that is totally spot on, because what do you call it you're when you're experience when there is a separation between how you're acting in the world and what you believe? It inherently creates friction. And I think that a lot of people know that there's a better way, but they're not consciously choosing to do anything differently. And they're going to complain and talk it away how it's somebody else's fault. But being a spiritual person requires taking ultimate responsibility. And when you take responsibility for all of it, then you're really empowering yourself to start creating what you want to see, and you start to take more responsibility for what you're putting out into the world, and what you're creating. So I think that's coming, because some of these things are they're reality shaking. It's reality shaking information. I mean, when you realize that you're just energy, if you zoom in, 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 you keep going and keep going past the molecules, into the atoms, into the subatomic particles, and you're looking at protons and neutrons and electrons, and you realize that there's nothing there. It's just energy. It's it can't help but change your world. But I think people tend to shy away from this stuff because again, the cognitive dissonance is very strong cognitive dissonance. It's basically just saying, like, the more you're presented with information that contradicts what you know to be true, the harder you hold on to, you push it away. You push away the new information, you push away the new way of thinking, the new way of being. And I think that there's going to be, and we're kind of at this point where you're not going to be able to do that anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons why people die, is because they they can't they would rather die than admit that they were wrong. They would rather die than adapt to the new information, because it challenges them on such a core level that it's easier to die. And maybe that sounds morbid, but I mean, if you believe what I believe in, then they just get reincarnated, and now they're maybe born into a family that is more accepting of the things that they were trying to push away. And so now they're born into a family and an environment to where they get to do those things. And so, I mean, one of the laws of thermodynamics is that energy can only change forms, it's never eliminated. So, just like a spirit dies and reincarnates, I mean, it makes sense to me. Um, it's like you don't, death is really only of the physical body. Death's not something that in this incarnation, this life, but you'll come back, whether it's here on earth or somewhere else. You'll be back, because that's what you are. That's what you're here to do. You're an agent of the universe, to learn and explore and help the universe learn about itself. So, yeah, you know, man, it's amazing how fast these things go. I mean, we're at 20 minutes. Like that's crazy. Um, so yeah, I think that there's going to be, this, just like there was the Renaissance and all of this kind of stuff. I think what's coming next is the spiritual, this, they call it the Great Awakening, but I mean, I think there's like the spiritual component of human existence and human culture and human societies are going to start coming to the fore and having a much greater presence um, in our civilizations. And I don't mean like religious, because I'm not talking about religion in that sense. Like religion is like a politicized and co-opted version of spirituality. And I have some interesting thoughts on that, but I'll just keep it there for the time being. I'm not talking about religion, because a lot of times it's a set of rules, and if you don't abide by the rules, then you're not getting into heaven. And they even, I mean, again, speaking of like Christianity and Catholicism, they use hell as a means to get people to do the right thing. So it's like, if you don't operate by these rules, these protocols, then you're going to go to hell. At the same time, you're born in natural sin, and your natural tendency is going to always be to sin. So it's like you see it, they like, it's like you're boxed in, you know? And there's some people who have managed to navigate all of that, and more power to them. It doesn't make sense to me, so I don't pursue that. I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in the church. Um, I don't believe that I have to follow certain rules in order to, not like that. I don't believe that I don't have to walk around with this shame and guilt that I'm constantly striving to be this person that I never I never chose that I wanted to be, living up to all of these people's expectations, and inherently, knowing that it's not possible. Um, I don't I don't operate like that anymore. So I don't think that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the spiritual component, the idea that everybody is a unique individual expression of the universal creativity, and that we're all here to pursue what makes us feel good and learn. That's why we're here, to learn. From the standpoint of learning, that's the only that's the only way any of this makes sense. I mean, I'm talking about like all the wars, all of the, what you would call bad things that have happened in human history, all the tragedies. We're here to learn, and we're here to learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of others. And we're here to grow and make the most of this experience and get to a place where we realize why it's better to pursue love, why it's better to make healthier decisions, more conscious decisions, more aware decisions, which a lot of people don't really seem to be into. But that's another conversation. But that's why I think we're here. I think we're here to learn. We're here to make this place better. This is this is heaven. This is heaven. Being able to touch things and hug people that you love, and physically feel close to people, and eat food, and take a poop and stub your toe and experience pain, because when you're not physical, you don't get to do those things. you know when you're not physical, you don't need to eat. So there's no poop, there's no pain from digestion or any of these kinds of things. And what I think we're here to do is we're here to learn, and we're here to take all of these things, especially being here now on this planet. We're here to take all of this stuff that we've experienced collectively as human beings and and turn it into something positive. We're here to alchemize all of this stuff into something that is useful, practical, you know, so that the people who are coming after us have a better framework of understanding all of these things that, that we had to experience, that came before us. There's always going to be learning to do, but the idea is that because we have free will, you know, we can choose to do something, or we can not choose to do something. But if we were just like, like a lion, it's just a lion. I mean, it's a powerful creature, but a lion is not an ape, is not a fish. A lion only knows how to be a lion, and it's not going to apologize for anything that it did while it was being a lion. And so it doesn't have choice. It has instincts, and it acts on those instincts. And as human beings, we're moving into a place where we're able to observe ourselves, and we're able to observe having these instincts, and then we're able to make a choice. We're not restrained or constrained or imprisoned by our instincts. And maybe at one point we were, but now we're not. So that's why I think one of the things that I think about, like, while we're here. We're here to learn, and we're here to make better decisions. So because this idea of suffering and um in pain, and while I do think that it's an inherent part of being alive on this earth, being incarnated as a material being or a crystallized light being on earth, it's not the degree to which pain and suffering has taken over is ridiculous, and it needs to stop. Furthermore, no, I'm not going to say that, because I think that the people who are doing all of this and creating all of these things that are creating and causing the suffering, or at least contributing to the suffering, they're suffering in a different way. Um, they're suffering in a different way. They're out of touch. They're out of touch with their higher self. I mean, just as much as anybody who's going along with all that bullshit and not feeling anything or not doing anything differently, um, is out of touch. Anyway, 28 minutes, just mind blowing how fast these things fly by. So, try to keep it short. 30 minutes, I guess, is short. Seeing how there's some tarot videos that are like 3 hours long. I mean, 30 minutes is not bad. And at least give a chance to expand on an idea. Um, so yeah, stay up. Don't let these motherfuckers bring you down. I mean, is kind of heavy topics or whatever, but at the end of the day, like I said, this is heaven. We're in heaven, man, and it's up to us to make the most of it, not just in our daily lives, but I see it as this spiritual community actually having a presence in the world, because right now most of it's on YouTube, and it's like on the internet, and there's certain groups meeting here and there. But I see this transitioning from the internet into, a reality, and like being able to see how many people there are in the world and in our communities that um, are ready to embrace this new way of thinking and living. So, yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there. Love you guys. Talk soon. Peace.